So this video is essentially about a real breakthrough in how we diagnose multiple sclerosis. Hi everybody, I'm Cliff and this is Life with MS. Rat-row, new shirt, well maybe not a new shirt. My brain had a party but nobody cleaned up the MS. Thank you for the shirt, Andrea. That's awesome. She's been really going crazy with making these like super fun shirts. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about today. And I first want to say thank you to everybody who's been commenting, subscribing, and liking, and leaving really valuable information for others in the MS community, because that's why I started this thing, so we could all share information from a patient perspective and not just go down the research and doctor rabbit hole, if you will. Like, we know what we're dealing with, and we have really great life hacks on how to deal with it. So thank you again. And thank you to everybody that continues to support the channel by purchasing the shirts that Andrea is making, because these are a lot of fun. And it's just a way to raise awareness as well. So I thank you very much. Okay, so this has been a hard news week, has it not? And I'm kind of stuck in this weird place where I could go down and be very negative about what's happening on the global side of things with our leadership. But you're hearing about that from every angle, and I just don't think that's going to do anything for anybody. However, in light of that, I figured if someone can get up on the global stage and give medical advice who's not qualified to do that, then why can't I, from a patient perspective, who has some experience with this stuff, talk about my interpretation of new studies that have come out that are actually based on scientific fact? How about that? That's a concept in itself. Like, let's use things that have the scientific method and talk about what kind of impact they're having on the community they're targeted for. So I'm really excited about this because there is this thing in the MS space called the McDonald Criteria, and it's the diagnostic criteria. And if you're thinking it's something that Ronald McDonald came up with,
here you go, 1 MRI, some steroids, and a DMT. Thank you.
You'd be wrong, but with what's currently going on with our administration, it might as well be Ronald McDonald coming up with this stuff. Okay, so why am I really excited? There's an update to Ronald McDonald. So why am I excited about this? All right, so there is a new updated version of the McDonald Criteria, and the McDonald Criteria has been around for about 2 decades, and it was basically used to guide neurologists to diagnose MS. And MS, being a very sneaky disease with lots of different things in play, has always been difficult to diagnose. It's always been a sort of what I call, and maybe others, I don't know, I'm not an expert, I'm just a patient and a bald dude on YouTube with MS. It's always been reactive medicine. So we find something and then we react to it. And the problem with that is it's not preventative medicine, right? Like, it's not a preventative diagnostic where basically maybe we could stop these things before they start, or we could lessen the damage they're going to do. Well, the update to the 2025 McDonald Criteria basically flips the model on its head, and it is now more of a preventative thing based on science and based on things we now know and that's what I love about the MS space. Things have happened. So let's get into this McDonald Criteria and see what it is. I'll explain to you the origins of it, where it has been, and where it is going. All right, so who is this video for? Well, it's for people that are just really interested in where we're going with this. And if we had this criteria back in 2017, 2015, 2011, I may not be dealing with the symptoms I'm dealing with today. I might have had my stuff discovered and would have been able to head it off at the pass. So this video is essentially about a real breakthrough in how we diagnose multiple sclerosis. And as I mentioned, this isn't just some small update. It is a fundamental shift in the way we think about it and how we approach it. And that is super cool. And think about that for a second. What if we have the power to stop multiple sclerosis before it ever really gets a foothold in the human body and starts causing damage? And what's super exciting about this is it has the capacity to change the course of someone's entire life who might be living with multiple sclerosis. And for those of us who are deeply familiar with MS, whether we have it, whether we treat it, or whether we live with somebody with it, we know how deeply complex this disease can be. This is about a brand new set of diagnostic rules that suggests that the faster you find out stuff, the quicker you can do something about it. And that's a no-brainer, pun intended. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the MS diagnostic dilemma. What were things like before? And we kind of know because we probably have MS. I have MS. You probably have MS. And as we talk about this, we're going to see why what's going on now is such a game changer. In my experience, it took me over 10 years to get a diagnosis. And you would think that that seems like really, really an outlier kind of statistic, but it's not. People with MS take a long time to get diagnosed. Some people get lucky and it happens quickly, but usually when that happens, it's because it's highly progressed and it's very obvious. However, for other people, you can have little symptoms along the way that continue to get worse, and they can look like a variety of many different things. So the diagnostic pathway is really, really long, and that sucks because a lot of damage can happen in that amount of time. So for fun and to lighten the mood, we're going to tell this like a detective story. And I think the best way to describe this journey on this pathway is to think that everybody's a detective to some degree. We're trying to catch the criminal in the act. And you need evidence for that, right? You need lots of evidence. And for doctors to say, yes, this is definitely MS, they need evidence.
Looks like this lesion is missing in action.
Indeed, a real no-brainer.
And for MS, it's two specific types of proof. First is a dissemination in space, and that's basically evidence that the disease has caused problems in the brain or in the spine.
Who's going to tell the patient? Not it.
Not it! Not it! Not it!
Oh, darn, again?
And the second is a dissemination in time, and that's proof that things have happened over a certain period of time. Both are very tricky to find evidence of in MS because of the way it works. So finding these clues, like I said, is very tricky. And how did doctors do this in the past? And you might be familiar with this, but if you're not deeply familiar with it, I'm going to give you a brief education on it.
Okay, one more spin.
Go.
They had to follow a very specific map and a very specific clock. So again, they needed to look at time and space.
We got our McDonald's criteria. Lesion. Same place, different time.
Good Lord, what a sicko. I bet he loved the salads too.
And these were all laid out in official guidelines, which we now know as the McDonald Criteria. So let's back up to the 2017 McDonald's Criteria and see what was required. It points out 4 key locations in the central nervous system.
Our guy knows where we aren't looking.
Bastard. He's got a lot of nerve.
And the rule was that the doctor had to find evidence of disease activity in 2 of these 4 spots. And at that point, they could actually check off the dissemination in space box. And here's where the rub comes in. But what happens if evidence in form of a lesion shows up that's not in one of those 4 spots? And we know MS is kind of random that way.
Looks like MS is one step ahead again.
Let me guess, this guy looked fine?
Damn it.
This could lead to a major delay in diagnosis, and it happens to a lot of people. And that means there's a lot of progression happening at the same time. And this is exactly what the 2025 update to the McDonald's Criteria is here to fix. So the new 2025 McDonald Criteria has 5 locations. And the big addition is the optic nerve. Now, we're all pretty familiar with the optic neuritis that comes with MS, and it's usually one of the first symptoms. So why weren't we looking at that before? Well, there's an answer to that.
Optic neuritis. This time.
MS didn't think we'd see this one. I guess it was waiting for the other foot to drop.
But the good news is that optic neuritis now shows up as one of the first signs of evidence of MS activity according to the McDonald Criteria. So it really accelerates the time in which we can get a diagnosis. So that's a major upgrade for the space part of the diagnostic criteria. But what about the time? And the time has always been the trickiest because of the way the disease works. We know this, right? 10 years for me because things would come and go and come and go, and we could never catch the character in action. From personal experience, I'll have to say that getting those MRIs after MRIs after MRIs got really, really freaking expensive here in the United States. So it's prohibitive in a lot of cases. And the sad part about this is because of those barriers and those pitfalls, the disease really has an opportunity to continue to progress. So time is working against us. So enter the 2025 diagnostic revelation, and believe me, this is where things start getting very interesting, and I think where we're going to see a massive change in how people are diagnosed and their outcomes with multiple sclerosis. I'm super excited about this. In a world of really bad news right now, this got, I think, overshadowed with all the other crap going on. This is freaking huge, and it's going to apply to a lot of different chronic conditions at some point. But for the first time in MS, we're really getting an opportunity to catch this character in the act before it can go in and rob us of our abilities and our mobilities and our vision and our thinking and all that. We're onto you, buddy. We're onto you.
females in their 20s and 30s. MS's favorite place. What a creep.
Dirtbag. I bet he brought the booze too.
And how are we going to do that? Well, we talked about time and space, but now we have biomarkers and we know how to identify those biomarkers. You know, there's so many things happening in the multiple sclerosis space in terms of research and findings right now. We know that MS leaves some very specific, though they could be subtle, biomarkers, and now we know how to find them. These are kind of like biological footprints in a crime scene.
Looks like MS left a subtle biomarker. Checkmate.
Good thing it's not a semen sample again.
And think about this. This went from like decades ago where we had to wait for individual attacks to cause like really crazy amount of damage to catch this thing in action. By that time, it's almost too late. And then we had the introduction of the MRI, which helped a little bit, actually a lot of bit. And then in 2017, we actually had the ability to not only use the MRI, but also look at spinal fluid to find other biological markers. And suddenly things started speeding up quickly. And I feel really bad for the people that had MS early on in like the 80s and the 90s, because that was a tough journey. I mean, we know MS sucks, and if we can get a diagnosis earlier, we can do a lot to prevent the damage from this. We can't cure it yet, but maybe we can stop it from being the butthead that it really is.
MS is on the run.
Let's head him off at the pass. He's headed for his drop foot posse.
All right, let's talk about some of the specific biomarkers that have been included in the McDonald criteria. And this one is super exciting because this research is not that old, and now it's like kind of a sure thing and a very specific biomarker of multiple sclerosis. And it is called CVS, central vein sign. And that means a vein going right through the center of a lesion. And it is so telltale of multiple sclerosis at this point, thanks to research, which I still believe in. I hope you do. We've proven that this is an MS thing, and it is part of the McDonald criteria now. So the central vein sign doesn't stand alone. We need to have a way to be able to detect it and see it, and the advances in MRI technology now allow that to happen. The things that are happening in the MRI field alone could be a whole nother episode for the nerds of us out there, but because of this technology, we are seeing deeper and more clear than we ever have before, and we're starting to see subtle telltale signs of multiple sclerosis long before they show up physically in the patient in terms of disability. That's freaking awesome. I love that. So think of it as the tools for a forensic team of doctors looking for specific clues on a crime scene for multiple sclerosis and catching them before they can put the whole gang together and cause problems. It's giving doctors a massive boost in confidence. And they also get to play like investigator, which I think they probably like. I think it's cool. Okay, so there's that, but now there's also advances in other tools, and that is in the cerebral spinal fluid. Now, we've been able to look at CSF, cerebral spinal fluid, in the past and use that, and we were looking for things called OCBs in that fluid. But now there's something new, something better, something more definite and easier to find. But now with a new, more sensitive test, we can look for kappa-free light chains in that CSF. And that is freaking awesome because that's giving us more evidence and also clearer evidence of disease activity. Think of it as kind of upgrading a metal detector from an old school one to something much more high resolution. It's a really strong piece of evidence that leads to an MS-specific type of inflammation. All right, so let's wrap this up from a 30,000 foot level. We're going from dissemination in space from 4 points to 5. Because we added the optic nerve, if you remember that, optic neuritis, optic nerve stuff. And then we can look at the lesion types. Now, before, with the criteria, we couldn't count the lesions and basically use that as point of evidence, but now we can. And I think that has something to do with the resolution of the imaging. And in the past, that lesion couldn't be considered related to the cause of a symptom, which I know from my specific situation, I had a lesion in my brainstem, which was causing my vision to go blurry. It wasn't just the optic neuritis. And with the biomarker stuff, we're going from just relying on OCBs to looking at light chains and also MRIs. And now we've gone from just looking at the OCBs in the CSF to looking at the CVS, which is, of course, the central vein sign. And with this group of biomarkers are now also the light chains that we talked about, the kappa light chains. So there is a lot that has happened in this update, and it all lets us see things way before they get really bad. This is a whole new era for MS diagnosis, and it just got completely washed over outside the neurology circles because of everything else that's going on in the world. But this is freaking huge, people. This is really big news. And what this means overall is we can finally give people solid answers that have been stuck in diagnostic limbo. And I know there are people that watch this channel that have subscribed and watch it often and comment a lot that are stuck in that diagnostic twilight zone of hell. This could be directly applied to you now because these are all technologies that are developed, they're cleared, and they're ready for deployment. I'm very hopeful for you. This is awesome news. And a few of you have mentioned being diagnosed with RIS, which is radiologically isolated syndrome, which basically says you went in, you got a scan, and they found something on your brain or on your spine that looked like a lesion, but it was a little bit inconclusive because you didn't have that time scale there. Now, because of those other technologies, they can look at that and combine those other technologies and these other new methods and biomarkers and give you an answer. You don't have to wait a length of time to see more damage happen or feel more damage happen. Because just because you're not feeling the symptoms doesn't mean they're not going to start happening. This is a big, huge improvement to this. And at this point in this conversation, I'm passionate about the idea, obviously, that if we can see these symptoms so early on, then we can put out the fire before it becomes a raging inferno. And we have the drugs to do that. We have the DMTs that will stop these things in its track with minimal side effects and minimal disease activity moving forward. This is awesome. I love this, guys. We are fundamentally changing the way we find MS and the way we diagnose MS. This is huge. There's one other thing to think about that I think is really the most important part of this conversation, and this means if we can spend less time diagnosing and we can get answers sooner, that frees up the resources to go from finding the disease to curing the disease. And that is the big thing here. Now we have the resources and the capacity not only to more confidently diagnose it, but now we can spend the time to figure out how we can eradicate this monster. And that's why I'm super excited about this. If you read between the lines, it looks like the cure's closer than ever. And while it's not obvious, it is very promising. So I realize this video is cut up a little bit. I really went through, and I've shot this video 5 times. I didn't like it the first 5 times. And I'm finally happy with it now because I wanted to make sure I conveyed the information in a very solid format that you didn't have to be a scientist or a doctor, or even a patient to understand, but you could kind of get an idea of the journey, the challenges, and what's happening in the space in terms of research and development. And this is what we're all raising money for, making things happen, and what we're all raising awareness around. So it's all very hopeful. So if it seems like it's a little cut up, yeah, it's because I really had to go through and think about each one of these segments, but I was really excited about doing it. So I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it because I wanted to pass this information along to you. I hope you enjoyed it. I tried to add some humor and entertainment to it. Today is a good day. I'm feeling good. You can tell I'm really moving along. I appreciate you all. You guys are awesome. I wouldn't be doing this without you, without your interaction, because I'm just so internally thankful that you are out there. I feel less lonely, as I always say. And Andrea and I just love your comments. So keep them coming. Share, like, and subscribe. You know the routine. And until next time, I'm Cliff. This is Life with MS, and I'm happy.
It's only a matter of time now. MS can't run forever.